Next panel, panel discussion 11, concerns historic cities and centers, new reuse and preservation strategies applying circular economy. Liminaidis, the moderator, the Nikia mayor is excused due to commitments he could not avoid. The mayor of Ioannina will be with us in a video. The CEO of Anaplasis is abroad and could not come back on time. He will come later. Professor Avierinou Kolonia Sofia, dear Sofia, National Technical University on the panel. Bakewell Joff, Mike Turner, Bonnie Burnham online. I'm here, and Haris Kokosis, our rapporteur, please on the panel.
So, as Professor Moropoulou said, in this session, we will be addressing historic cities and centers, new reuse, and preservation strategies applying circular economy principles. Our first speaker will be the mayor of Ioannina, who will be speaking to us, who has sent a video, I believe. If we could see the video.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, it's a great honor for me to be here today among experts from all fields representing my city, Ioannina, a city with a long and rich history, a city that is developing, a city that is on the way to shaping its identity for the future, the city that I love. Through my role of mayor, I would like to bring to these interesting discussions the perspective of local governance and the values we set in order to address the challenges of preservation in the modern context, embracing new strategies, particularly those rooted in the principles of local democracy and circular economy. Historic centers embody the sense of palimpsest. Each layer tells a story of different cultures, architectural styles, and community experiences. We need to honor these layers while also considering the needs of today's residents and fostering a sense of belonging. For an equitable and effective preservation strategy, we adopt the guiding principles of the new European Bauhaus, which prioritize sustainability, aesthetics, and inclusivity. In this direction, the circular economy means using materials and techniques that reduce waste and environmental impact. We need to consider adaptability. How can we repurpose existing structures to meet current needs without compromising their historic value? We also need policies that identify our valuable traditional craftspeople and ensure their involvement to shaping guidelines to optimize the use of the local materials, giving them the space to share their knowledge and inspire innovative approaches. A cohesive narrative that tells the story of our historic centers' evolution should highlight the contribution of all buildings, old and new, and how they collectively shape the community's identity. We see it as an opportunity to create dialogue between the past and the present. The dialogue can enhance our understanding of how communities change and adapt over time and foster a sense of ownership and pride among residents. An example of this coexistence of old and new in Ioannina are the two buildings of former bus stations that were functional until 2 decades ago, located in the hearts of the two most historic districts of our city. These two traces of mid-century architecture stand among iconic buildings, historic neighborhoods, and more recent developments. They are not a property of the municipality, and we are currently trying to find a legal and funding scheme to establish them as landmarks with enriched content. In this process of creating history through tracing history, we face serious challenges. As a local authority, we have a clear vision and established principles, but we are constantly trying to overcome obstacles such as the legal framework, the public procurement system, and above all, the funding. That's why we're working on deploying a strategy to find a common ground between the public and private sectors in order to join forces and maximize impact. What we carry in our toolbox. We are not alone in this effort. The municipality of Ioannina is participating as a pilot city in the European mission 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030, and as a part of this initiative, we receive valuable support from the Net Zero Cities organization in the fields of sustainability and urban transformation. We also work closely with the University of Ioannina to document our decision-making and to draw on their research and human resources to shape our strategies. Historical knowledge, architectural documentation, climate studies, health reports, and new materials and techniques are some of the valuable inputs we receive from our local academy. How the local administration can serve as a catalyst for the process. Local governance has a role to play in mediating conflicts that may arise between preservation interests and development pressures. By facilitating dialogue between stakeholders, we can help find balanced solutions that respect both historic integrity and community needs. Municipal authorities can also help raise awareness about the importance of preserving historic districts. This may involve educational programs, outreach efforts, or partnerships with local organizations to promote the heritage and significance of the area. In conclusion, as we move forward with the preservation and reuse of historic cities and centers, it's essential to find strategies that honor our past while promoting innovation. Our key principles are the respect for identity, the adoption of sustainable practices, the inclusion for our local craftsmanship, and the promotion of social cohesion. By doing so, we can create vibrant spaces that honor our past while embracing the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Begas, for that very interesting presentation. And the initiatives what I found significant is the private and public partnerships, as well as the engagement of the local community, which is very important in all of these efforts, as well as the idea of retaining and preserving the past while introducing innovations, and basically to maintain the livability, habitability of your city. Thank you very much. And now we will proceed. Unfortunately, Mr. Akritidis was not able to arrive in time, so I will ask my dear friend, Professor Sofia Avgerinou-Colonias, professor of the National Technical University of Athens in Urban and Regional Planning, the School of Architecture. Sofia, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, dear Lee Minaidis, very old friend. And also, I would like to thank the organizer, especially my friend, very old friend and good friend, Professor Antonia Moropoulou. And also my colleague and dear good friend, Haris Kokosis. So I'm very pleased to be here with you. I have a short presentation of approximately 5 minutes, but I think with focus on the topic of this very interesting session and congress. So I'm going to speak a little about the circular urban planning for historic cities. There is a well-known relationship between culture, creative cultural industries, and urban development. How can we move together? Okay. Cultural creative industries, which are closely linked to the development of historic cities, create on the one hand social and cultural networks, including clusters, networks, hubs, and collaborative spaces, which constitute the so-called creative ecosystem, and on the other hand, implement recycling process. However, waste management remains a challenge in many historic cities. This is a multi-faced social, economic, and urban environmental issue, the resolution of which is of considerable research interest. As we have observed from our research in National Technical University, the well-functioning of creative ecosystem can facilitate recycling process and simultaneously promote the regeneration of historic cities. We applied in selected historic Mediterranean cities within the project promoting upcycling in circular economy through innovation and education for creative industries in Mediterranean cities in AMEDAP. Under NTUA's responsibility, we have established innovative practices and smart tools to connect small and medium enterprises, creative and cultural enterprises through circular networks of collaboration and exchange. We found that the cities and creative cultural industries need to consider their specific urban and economic characteristics, such as socioeconomic fabric, the availability of raw materials and technologies, or the position in the global supply chain, and to be informed about the different solutions they can adopt to contribute to circular urban development. A second important finding was that a new approach to urban and land use planning is needed in conjunction with the circular economy and the latest recommendations in the global scientific debate on cities and historic urban landscapes. Circular urban planning is an alternative model inspired by the principles of circular economy applied to city building. Its goal is to implement the principles of the circular economy in urban development. It designs and organizes the city based on what already exists and in such a way that it can constantly rebuild itself according to the changing needs of population. Following this hypothesis, We proposed within the project CARISMET the restoration of the built environment by implementing low-cost adaptive reuse strategies, LCARS, to underutilized or abandoned urban stock, area, site, or building. LCARS are combined with sustainable development and the circular economy. Specifically, the LCARS strategy initiates a systemic change in consumption, production, planning, policies, lifestyle, cultures, and values. It can also produce significant sustainable impacts in residential areas and common resilient outcomes for the well-being of citizens. Three main axes for urban circularity. Look deep into the characteristics of building stock, production, and supply chain to map the current state of circularity in the urban built environment, existing challenges, potential circular solutions, and innovative approaches at the urban level. Priority should be given to the imperative of a paradigm shift towards a circular economy through innovative urban policy, considering the opportunities presented by the role of creative cultural industries, small and medium enterprises, in shaping the urban environment while preserving the rich cultural heritage of historical cities. The integration of upcycling methods in urban development, green infrastructure and architecture, the adoption of renewable energy sources and low-cost adaptive reuse practices, LCARS, is necessary for an effective and inclusive green transition based on the resilience of historical cities and the cultural creative industries they host. Furthermore, the successful implementation of circular urban planning within historic cities requires to analyze and understand the interactions between public policies and local specificities, promoting social inclusion and community participation as key factor in facilitating this transition. And finally, to ensure adequate governance of historic towns and cities. Thank you. Short, 5 minutes.
Perfect timing, Sophia. Thank you very much. And thank you for this presentation of the various projects that you are involved with in the development and of in historic cities especially, and emphasizing as well the resilience of historic cities that have lasted many centuries, many of them, and also we see a theme from Ioannina into these projects of social inclusion and community involvement, which is very important. And now we will go forward with Professor Jeff Bakewell, who is online. Yes, from Rhodes College, the American School of Classical Studies. Okay. Professor Bakewell, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person. Is it possible for me to share my screen with you all?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. So, sorry, let me pull this up. And then let's go here. Okay, so thank you again. Can you hear me all?
Yes.
So I would like to talk to you today very briefly about my work as a person studying Athenian topography and the ancient philosopher Plato. And I wanted to make you aware of some of the ways in which this kind of scholarly work ties in very well with your emphasis on historic cities and centers, using Athens as a sort of a case study here. So this comes out of some archaeological work I've done with the American School of Classical Studies, that I published a preliminary version of in its journal, Hesperia, and that's if you want to look at sort of the scholarly underpinnings. As many of you will recall, Plato's Politeia begins with this statement. I went down yesterday to Piraeus, kateven kthesis Piraea meta glafkonos to Aristonos, and I started wondering, what would it mean to take seriously the idea that one could walk from the Upper Poli down to Piraeus? And here you see sort of a schematic idea of what that might mean with up on the upper right, the upper city of Athens, the very narrow corridor of the long walls leading down to Piraeus, and then its three harbors. So this is what it looks like if you look at it on Google Maps, of course. This is what it looks like if you put in the aerial view from the same platform. And this is a somewhat more evocative look at what it looks like when you look at it from the Kavitos, looking down towards Piraeus, right? So if we take seriously the idea that Plato, in thinking about the Politeia, is having us begin with a topographical framing of a walk, what does it mean to take that walk?
We don't see your presentation.
We're not
Can you
seeing
share
the
it?
slides. This is the problem.
I see. You can't see the slides. Okay, I'm sorry about that. So you're not seeing any of the slides.
Just share.
Okay, so let me pull that back, because if you can't see them, I'm not sure why, but let me speak to you then. There are two organizations that are doing great work in using electronic and digital resources to help us think about ancient topography. One of them is Topos Text, founded by a foundation, a Greek foundation, and put together by Brady Kiesling, a prominent American expat, who has been able to link to your phone, to your cell phone, the ability to pull up essentially all ancient textual references to particular places. At the same time, the group Dipylon, an Athenian group, has managed to create digital walkways to places like Plato's Academy, and walking down along the long walls, and walking the ancient circuit wall of the city. So with these two kind of resources, without doing any damage or having to do any sort of excavation in the modern city, you can today walk the streets of Athens with your phone and explore ancient pathways that are very, very important for our understanding of ancient Greek philosophy. Now, the next step is to integrate these kinds of resources to allow us, as we stroll about the city, to pull up both ancient texts and modern scholarship and photos from a variety of ages to think, okay, if we want to think topographically about the ancient historical city, we can walk around with all of these references in our pocket, recreating some of the journeys that are most significant for understanding ancient Athens. And we already have started to do a little tiny bit of this. Think about the impact of bringing the ancient marathon back to the center city occasionally. We can do the same sort of thing without having to do any excavation anywhere in the modern city. Just imagine the possibility of, say, recreating the walk to celebrate the ancient mysteries at Elefsina with your phone. And the resources to do this are starting to be available now through organizations like Topos Text and Dipylon. So that's what I have to say, and I would be grateful for questions later. I'm sorry the slides didn't work.
Thank you, Professor Bakewell. We would have loved to have seen your slides, but thank you for presenting to us aspects of modern technology in its use for understanding antiquity and periods of antiquity. So we move forward to Professor Mike Turner, a dear friend, professor of the Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design in Jerusalem and the UNESCO Chair in Urban Design and Conservation Studies. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you to Tonya, thank you to all my friends and colleagues, which I can see on the panel. I shall be looking at new reuse and preservation strategies, and I'll speak about cyclical thinking beyond the circular economy. Next one. So, Anna Lacoton was the Pritzker Prize laureate of 2021. She had written that demolition is a waste of many things, a waste of energy, a waste of material, and a waste of history. In fact, the circular economy is an innovative approach to production and consumption that focuses on minimizing waste and making the most of resources. Unlike the traditional linear economy, which follows take, make, and dispose model. It aims to keep the materials and resources in use for as long as possible, and which is most relevant for building adaptive use as a product. Addressing urban change needs cyclical thinking as an insightful way to understand patterns in life and history and processes. Similarly, instead of seeing things as linear progressions, this perspective emphasizes recurring themes, cycles, and interconnectedness. For this thinking, we need not only to recognize patterns, appreciate cycles of renewal like the repeating seasons, but realize a holistic thinking. Cyclical thinking encourages viewing the urban ecosystem as part of a broader system rather than isolated incidents, fostering deeper analysis and awareness. Adaptive reuse is an essential component of a living city. Beyond the survival of the fittest is also the survival of the adaptive, survival being conditional to the one that is able to adapt best and adjust to the changing moral, physical, political, social, and spiritual environment in which it finds itself, referencing the Darwinian natural selection hypothesis of descent with modification. The Pantheon in Rome is the emblematic global example providing the ultimate proof of the adage. For the architectural monument or the individual building, adaptive reuse is considered an integral part of a diary of events, becoming, in the words of the Venice Charter, inseparable from the history to which it bears witness and from the setting in which it occurs, underscoring that valid contributions of all periods must be respected, since unity of style is not the aim of a restoration. The dissonance of lifespans between buildings' fabric, the furnishings, the use, the contextual changes surrounding its setting is frequently accommodated through adaptive reuse, whereby the physical attribute of the material fabric is retained. This becomes the more relevant when we address the concerns of sustainability and the importance for the conservation of our physical resources by extending the life of a building and with diverse models, which we can see here. However, the adaptive reuse of the urban fabric is more complex. The 2011 UNESCO recommendation on the historic urban landscape addresses these very issues on an approach going beyond the notion of the historic ensemble to include wider setting and context, paragraph 8, and which can also be identified in the retrofitting of the diverse components that make up our urban heritage in paragraph 9. This approach must be supplemented by the continuity of urban memory and intangible community values, which may be understood through the adaptive reuse of ideas, images, and texts. These resemble buildings in that over time they may become unsuitable by persisting in their original purpose. While adaptive reuse is an alternative to demolition, the adaptive reuse of ideas, texts, and images saves them from vanishing. As a result, the intellectual environment, like a city, preserves at least in part its traditional outlook, although serving a new programmatic requirements. The question is not so much on the values and attributes of a place, but the urban narratives and texts and their interpretations. Adaptive reuse moves the focus of the value from the use to other attributes, such as materials and substance, spirit and feeling, in determining the urban continuity and renewed identities over time. Specifically, it is related to understanding the differences between synchronic and diachronic heritage. Synchrony and diachrony are two different and complementary viewpoints in linguistic analysis, but may be applied in reading the urban scene. Simply stated, the synchronic approach considers the moment in time without taking history into account, while a diachronic approach considers development and evolution over time, critical for continuing urbanism. Adding to this urban complexity, each layer or component might be alternatively synchronic or diachronic. The adaptive reuse of Hong Kong's Tai Kwan Center of Heritage and Arts Complex being an exceptional example where the new synchronic adaptive reuses are tempered with a diachronic memory evoked by the physical fabric, challenging the values of its original use for incarceration. Other examples abound. The challenging values of bullfighting to an epic commercial center, the railway station to a museum, new lines of distribution take over shopping malls, while ports and markets reinvent themselves. Adaptive reuses is at all scales, from large-scale infrastructure to telephone booths. The reality of the increased pressures of development resulting in large-scale demolitions leaves a new legacy that needs to be redefined. This includes identifying the values of the remaining physical attributes from past decades, or possibly creating new values through contemporary interventions. Urban adaptive reuse is process-orientated, as opposed to the architectural refit that is project-orientated. Regardless of its challenge, the new approach brings together many disciplines with multiple communities, with a rewarding experience for future generations by engaging with the continuity of intangible spirit and feeling. And let me end with Brecht's poems of a way to construct enduring works. How long do works endure? As long as they are not completed, since as long as they demand effort, they do not decay. Inviting further work, repaying participation, their being last as long as they invite and reward. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mike, for your very interesting and inspiring presentation. I take away the survival of the adaptive, or the adaptive reuse of ideas, which I'd never really considered, and your lovely examples of large and small circular economy reuse. And now we will move forward to another dear friend, Bonnie Burnham, who is the founder and president of the Cultural Heritage Finance Alliance, and also the president emerita of the World Monuments Fund. Bonnie, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Lee. It's a pleasure to be there with you. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
I'd like to share my slides as well, but just let me see. With a word to say that this is my fourth participation in the TMM-CH conference. This is the first time I've been there virtually, but my comments will reflect some experiences and presentations that I've made in the past, because what I'm going to be talking about today is, you might say, a culmination of a long journey attempting to try to put heritage conservation, and particularly adaptive reuse, and the effective economic use of heritage sites into an economic context. And that's what the Cultural Heritage Finance Alliance is doing. I'm seeing that my slide presentation is still connecting, so I'm going to just keep talking. You may see the slides eventually. This year, thanks in large part to introductions from Lee Manitis, the Cultural Heritage Finance Alliance launched a partnership with the Organization of World Heritage Cities, which has itself been on a pursuit to address issues that have emerged as common problems shared by the members of this organization, which are amongst the most prestigious cities in the world in terms of their recognition. And I've already spoken briefly about these problems in the opening session, but they relate to depopulation caused by a variety of factors that range from the effects of climate change to changing economics of the urban centers, and challenges that have to do with things like mobility and how livable these historic centers have become. After some discussion, the Organization of World Heritage Cities has adapted a series of 4 themes, which they call the 4 axes of a new urban project, which is intended to be presented at the next Congress of the Organization of World Heritage Cities in 2026 in Marrakesh. And these themes have to do, first of all, with habitability, what they call requalify the habitat, meaning focus on abandoned and dilapidated buildings that exist in all these historic environments, and create a harmonious and dynamic relationship between residents and other users. And so that goes straight to this topic that's already been talked about today, of finding ways to make existing buildings and the history that they contain more productive within the urban context. The second theme is to refresh the city, to add green space and make residents more aware of the relationship between nature and the urban environment, and how catastrophic interactions such as flash flooding and things like that have become a feature of many cities that are ill prepared for the new world of increasing rainfall and other kinds of environmental phenomena can be adapted. Their third theme is to transform mobility, meaning move away from the car only model and introduce other forms of mobility that favor responsible, ecologically responsible travel. Many of cities are experimenting with green transportation and the reduction of cars, and it closely relates to the discussion about the greening of the city. And then the fourth theme is to regenerate the urban environment, meaning revitalize city centers in a way that draws upon territorial intelligence and the intrinsic identity of each city. And so those themes are a point of reflection for the organization, as well as a kind of strategy for expanding their capacities individually and collectively for addressing these problems. The CHIFA, the Cultural Heritage Finance Alliance, converged with their thinking in the presentation of a series of success factors that, from our research, help to ensure that cities can progress toward these kinds of goals. And these are political will, leadership from the governmental sector, measurable outcomes from a social, economic, and environmental perspective, mitigation of risk for investment and encouragement of incentives, capable and empowered non-governmental leadership, and transparent management. Hearing about these success factors, the Organization of World Heritage Cities adopted them as part of their new urban project as a kind of framework for measurement of progress and success. And so we've converged now in a program which is called the Urban Heritage Regeneration Accelerator. As many of you know, regeneration projects can take a long time and can cross over from one political regime to another over time. And so our goal is to try to fast track projects that try to achieve these goals in individual cities where most of the work is happening on the ground, and our mentor group is providing guidance and a kind of matrix for reaching success. So this is what we're embarking upon in the next couple of months. We have put out a call for applications and received a very interesting range of proposals from cities in the developing world and cities in Europe. So I think our cohort of 5 to 6 cities, which will be announced in the coming weeks, will combine cities that have very large capacity but are trying to stretch their capabilities to address these new urban issues that have arisen in the last decades, and cities that are really starting from scratch and have very little articulated policy and strategy. It's a 9-month program, at the end of which we, as the accelerator model implies, will intend to bring the participants and their presentations in a group of pilot projects to contact with potential investors, with interested parties that could help them to create a kind of circular ecosystem of renewing support amongst these various sectors. So I think that's the sense of what we're trying to achieve. I've already heard similar presentations this morning about other cities that are undergoing a similar process. So I think we're all on the same page in terms of what needs to be in order for our historic cities and the city centers to be part of the future in terms of being able to function within growing urban environments around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. It is the new urban project of the organization really has and will benefit from the partnership with GIFA, and we are very appreciative of your efforts. I'm speaking now on behalf of the organization of World Heritage Cities, and for the regeneration of city centers and the needed financing, which is always, a problem. And with your help, many cities will benefit. So now we move on to my other dear, I'm so pleased to have so many dear friends on the panel.
That's great.
Professor Emeritus Antonia Moropoulou of the National Technical University of Athens, School of Chemical Engineering. Antonia, you have the floor.
Thank you, dearly. It seems that within the last 4 TMM-CH conferences, we have established a forum through this panel with some militants which are stable. And I would like to say that, yes, indeed, there are directives, there are guidelines. We understand where we have to take the historic cities so that they will have a future. But within this discussion up to now, a fresh air is coming where we are stuck. And of course, I will come back to what I have to present to you, but I want to say this in advance because I was tired to present research work, cultural regeneration in order to go further with local people, but we came to a point that we cannot go further. Up to now, I keep what Mike Turner said, that in order to apply the principles of circular economy within the regeneration of historic cities, we have to readapt our conception of the cities and our culture towards city living, city planning, and city regenerating. This is true indeed, as well as what Bonnie Burnham said, and what is responding to what Liminaidis and the Organization of World Heritage Cities are doing, that what is going on and is giving us a hope that there will be a progress is a private initiative through the Alliance for Cultural Heritage funding, this institution that Bonnie Burnham has established. Because the major question is, how shall we promote adaptive reuse of an historic stock of buildings within an historic centers towards the direction of developing revenue? Because without a revenue, the public economies are incapable anymore to cover the gap of funding in order to provide protection and sustainability, longevity, and livability to the historic cities. They failed. So whatever we plan, whatever we say, is not going on, is not being implemented. Now, there is a fresh air from a private investment. But even though so, during the last 9 years, I'm going around with Bonnie Burnham to the municipality of Athens, to the municipality of Rhodes, where we are having important historic stocks of buildings in the historic centers. In Athens, 1,500 of public ownership. In Rhodes, 340 in public ownership. We are speaking for a plan of regeneration through the adaptive reuse of these buildings. There are discussions, there are even private interests to invest in order to preserve, to rehabilitate to the new use this historic stock of buildings, but there is not the proper legal framework and the new legislative institutional framework that would permit to the state to give a long time leasing to the investor in order to go on and to produce revenue. Furthermore, how could the investor, through that leasing, provide the basis to the public owner, the municipality, or the agency, the development agency, to get the benefit through this investment to go on to make some long-term loans and with the revenue added to that to provide protection to the historic city. All these are questions. So with all these questions, very briefly, I will go back to what is happening today. First of all, the UNESCO's historic urban landscape through the approach of 2011, the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN 2015, and the new urban agenda, the Habitat 3 of 2016. It is a must that we have to keep up livable historic cities, economically viable and resilient. Key principles: authenticity and integrity, sustainability, community involvement, legal protection and management plans, adaptive reuse, documentation and research. Preservation. Preservation is not a luxury, but the public funds are not capable anymore, neither philanthropy, to cover this need. We are going to the public-private investments, to Cultural Heritage Investment Alliance in order to cover this gap. But how would that be implemented? Of course, integrated approaches are the basic framework to go on with this. The summit of the southern countries of the European Union in Athens, September 21, concluded that climate change prevention measures in all sectors have to redefine regeneration strategies in historic cities. These are important axes, and the United Nations World Tourism Organization has pointed out how sustainable tourism, like the one that Bakul Geoff presented to us, how through rediscovering the history, strolling within the city, we would give to the city some points, some perspectives for new economic benefits. But the question is dealt within what we very gently call cultural relativism. Cultural relativism means how the local society is conceiving the changes. And that means that local decisions, according to the social involvement, are defining the future of the well pre-designed solutions. For instance, in Heraklion, no details, just we assessed the environmental impact of the traffic and urban plan around the Venetian walls, and we decided that if the land uses would not have been changed around the walls, these would have been destroyed in a very short time. The impact of the traffic on the fortress, the bus stations around it should be changed through applications, technical applications, we made our suggestions. For the good of the city, the local authorities decided for these changes and they applied it. But this was something that had no cost, but only the cost to change the habits of the local people, the inhabitants. And they were positive to that. So that's the positive aspect of cultural relativism. But there is another one. In our homeland, in the medieval city of Rhodes, where both of us with Lee have worked a lot in order to go a step further, here we are stuck. We are stuck because of the reasons I have said in advance, and we have to admit that. So I am presenting a work we have made from different levels and mechanisms, and Lee and me, but we are now at a point that something else has to be done in order to go further. Okay, the cultural regeneration of the medieval city has been achieved by the young generation, the youth ministry at the 80s. Harris was with us at that time. And the whole moat of the medieval city was cleaned out and had a cultural reuse, along with some fortresses that were regenerated and reused culturally. But the international trends and the guidelines that were requiring a new specific urban planning, a program for sustainable preservation, a program for adaptive reuse within the circular economy direction, based on well-documented and well-estimated plans, is still at the level of plans. And that's the question we are posing from here. We need a new alliance. This new alliance should not be only a funding alliance, which is a prerequisite. It should be a social and political alliance as well, to convince central governments, local governments to decentralize their power to the local, and from the local to decentralize their power to the initiators of these new plans. This is a new era. Either we go on with this, or if we stay, we will have devalued our cultural capital. To this question, we should be together and go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tanya, for this presentation, which reveals or reminds us of the limitations that we have at this time and the obstacles that are before us in the efforts of so many to restore, to reuse the historic centers, buildings in Rhodes, as you said, and in Athens, but also your point of a need for not only financing, but a social and political alliance, which is very important. So now, shall we go for questions or comments, and then to our.
He would like to make his presentation.
Oh, you have a presentation. Oh,
Not necessarily.
Most necessarily, of course. You have a president, yes. So, our rapporteur, and again, dear friend, Haris Kokosis, who will, I didn't realize there was indeed a presentation. Haris, you have the floor.
We have heard the necessity to innovate and take advantage of potential contributions, seeking actors who could mobilize the system. So I thought that I could add to our thinking about what we have to do in putting the complexity of the situation that we are facing, it was already. So first of all, we're talking about cities and city centers. These are living environments, and they are constantly changing. So they contain several activities, but we know that the way our lives are changing and economy is developing, etc., there is in many areas around the world, there is an abandonment of city centers and cities, and everybody's trying to take advantage of artificial intelligence systems and work from afar and live in distant places that are, and even there is a restructuring of enterprises, as we understand, by breaking up the components and maintain only the essential part in the center of the city. So that creates dynamics that could facilitate interventions like this in terms of dealing with having a demand which is changing, but also keeping away from the tremendous pressures that city centers face. The second has been already presented. We deal with areas that have a historic character. They feed us with important items that we need as society to develop on a contemporary basis that constantly changes, and we have to look at changes in a way that by bringing in our past as well. The third part, which was also presented, is about the policy context, which is changing rapidly. Economy is changing, society is changing, and the way we look at environment is changing. Of course, we have developed, as Tonia Moropoulou presented, guidelines, principles, etc., but we have to go beyond that and work on the social responsibility aspect, meaning mobilize actors and mobilize also respondents, societies, to think about it. And of course, we planners, we deal with how can we contribute to that, and we know that urban planning, urban design is the essential basis, which talks about principles and processes. But then we lack the last component, which is the empirical cultural experience. But so we talk about demographic dynamics, societal values that are changing. We know people are more individualistic in contemporary society, in the sense they look to satisfy their own particular needs and interests. And then we all read about economic development dynamics that are affecting our places. And of course, that has some changes on the institutional context. And Tonia again gave us the concept that we have to move from the central to regional to local to sub-local, and try to facilitate this process and make sure that it works. And it's not that we don't talk about levels of intervention, but also the interaction across levels. And of course, what we have not talked about, because we have not proceeded with doing something about it, is implementation. So once we have a program, we have to see how it works, whether it reaches our goals. So there is a need for monitoring and evaluation system, which is the essence of coping with change. So there are key issues that have emerged, which I would like to just to remind you. Center city functions are changing. The artificial intelligence effects are evident. As we said, there are concerns about the necessity to provide habitat, residences, the availability, and because of tourism and other reasons, there are problems created, and we know that there are several cities around, from Amsterdam, Barcelona, Venice, etc., that have long-term efforts to cope with these pressures and provide affordable places for people to live in the center of the city, affordable and accommodating in the sense on a contemporary context. There is a problem, particularly with short-term residencies, what we know as Airbnb, etc., which create pressures to change the character of particularly central areas or around historic centers, as we know. And it tends to be, it creates problems of various kinds, which we have read already, but it is there. It's not something which is easy. It cannot be easily controlled, so it is an issue. And then, of course, we come to what can we do about it with the existing legal framework? How can urban planning interfere? Can we talk about residences and residence areas, okay? How about these short-term rentals? Are they affecting residence areas? Are they stimulating? Because there are positive aspects as well. There are areas in Athens, at least, and many other places that have been revitalized because of this system. And of course, they're revitalized, but they have also lost many of their residents. So we have to respond, and you've heard from all speakers about reaction, adaptability, resilience, building up resilience, meaning the capacity to be functional with coping with changes. So essentially, one of the key areas also is to seek the means, not only the legal and the institutional context, but as Tonya said, the funding of that. So I think this is just, as a rapporteur, a summary of challenges that we are facing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Harry. It was really, I think, you, in your presentation, but it was also part of your summing up of as the rapporteur, because it gave all challenges, issues, what needs to be done, and what, as you said, has been mentioned and put forth by other speakers.
I was lucky to have a coordinator who did most of the job.
I absolutely did not, but thank you very much. So, before you give your final summary, shall we go forth with questions or comments? Are there any questions to members of the panel, either here or those online, or comments that you would, that anyone would like to make known to the Assembly? We've said it all. Okay, so, Hari, as... Sorry? So, as
a rapporteur,
the best I know.
I was lucky to have an excellent coordinator who did most of the most of the job to identify the key issues discussed. I tried to give mostly an added let's say, perspective from the point of view of the rapid changes that we're facing. And because all the interventions were gave us the different ways that we're thinking about coping with these changes. But what I wanted to stress mostly with mine was to stress that changes are fast. And of course, we have realized that we're not fast enough to react. And by the moment we react, it's already sometimes too late, and things have changed so much, we have to rethink our what we have to do. And we have heard about the necessity, the opportunities and examples of participating in efforts like this from the net zero cities, for example. It goes from the mayor of Ioannina to the creative ecosystem and promoting upcycling by and circular urban planning, which is a new perspective to rethink about planning. And we heard about tools that could help us also to add to our efforts for innovation, like recreating ancient walks and ancient topography, which was by Professor Barker, and also the preservation strategies and adaptive reuse, which is not it's not a process, but it's an orientation. That means an attitude, of societal attitude, by Mike Turner, and of course all these the four axes of the World Heritage Cities initiatives, which is habitability, green space, transformation of mobility, revitalization. And of course, the necessity of regeneration strategies and rediscovering history and need for social alliance, which Tonya said. So I think this more or less summarizes the key some of the points of the intervention, because they were very rich and it's very difficult to come up with a full spectrum of this.
So thank you very much, Khali, for the brilliant summary. And with that, we may conclude this panel. If there are any comments or questions, no?
Any comment? Adi? I see Adi laughing.
Yeah, I just want to say that completely.
On the microphone.
I just want to say that, first of all, thank you for all the presentation, because they were really enriching. And I totally agree with what you were saying, Tonya, about the feeling that we have to change something in the way that we react, because the questions sometimes are, we taking them along with us for a few decades already. And we see that the situation of some of the historic centers are really not improving. So the innovative thinking that we heard here in this panel may help to change something, but I'm carrying for less decades than you are accompanying these processes, but somehow I have this feeling with me with some of the historic centers that I'm familiar with. So this is a comment and a shared feeling, I think.
Are there any comments or questions from our speakers online? Any further thoughts that you would like to share with us? No?
Bonnie. Okay.
All right. It seems that all has been said. I thank all of the speakers and our rapporteur for a great job, and so wonderful to see my friends on screen there as well, and hope that we will be able to meet in person in the near future. Thank you all very much, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you,
Really,
Lee. And stay all online for the photo of
yes,
the panel,
yes.
please.
You'll stay
and
online
our
because-
appointment will be at the 5th TMM,
Yeah.
December 26.